My name is Margaret Hiss, and I am the Director of Digital Services here at Zuri Group. At Zuri, I work with our clients more on the digital front. We create unique strategies and execute them through a number of technologies. Some of those tools we'll speak to today. I think my favorite part of working with our clients at Zuri Group is really being able to think outside the box and listen to some of their challenges that they're currently experiencing and create some really unique solutions. Some of those solutions we'll dive into today, but before we do, I'd love for Carly to give us a quick intro as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Samuelson, and as Margaret mentioned, I get the pleasure of working with her and with Zuri Group as a senior consultant and fundraising strategist. I have spent over 20 years in nonprofits working specifically with peer-to-peer fundraising strategies. And I've worked for some really, really powerful, great organizations that have used peer-to-peer to power a lot of their mission work. So it is a pleasure to now be where I'm sitting here and talking to you guys today, and using kind of the knowledge base that I've gathered and Margaret's gathered around technology to host this brainstorming session where the end result is hopefully going to spark creativity and spark new thoughts from you as an audience of people looking for ways to maybe raise some additional funds. So I'm excited to jump in, and we're happy to have you, and we will continue on. Thanks, Margaret.
Yeah, I'll give you guys a little background in Zuri Group for those of you who aren't familiar. And I did want to make a comment too about Carly and I, being here together to have this discussion. Carly definitely takes on, the fundraising strategy aspect, and you'll hear as we move on that I'm more of the technical portion of today's conversation. And I think from those two views, you get a really awesome, collaborative, comprehensive view on virtual fundraising and peer-to-peer. But like I said, for those of you who aren't familiar with Zuri Group, we are a full service web technology firm serving only nonprofits. We focus a lot on technical CRM work, so more of that back end data piece, strategic fundraising and consulting. So like I said, Carly will help us through some of our ideas and brainstorm sessions today. We also work with web design and development, so creating unique designs to support peer-to-peer fundraising or web designs in general. And then digital marketing solutions. So a lot of those data-driven design decisions or data-driven decisions in general. We work through SEO and analytics to really suit you up for a successful fundraiser. I think what makes Zuri Group a unique partner is our people, or that's what we typically say. We're a group of about 50 people with over 900 years of experience in this space, and that should give you a sense of kind of the folks that we have here on our team. And we've been in business for over 12 years, and I think through some of the ideas that we'll talk through today, you'll see that there's a lot of brainstorming action behind the scenes here at Zuri. Today, right? Today our focus will be on peer-to-peer fundraising, and we'll talk through some of the non-traditional ways to kind of bend the peer-to-peer model. We'll focus on how you can maximize technology along with strategy to raise more money. And here's a little bit of our agenda. I think we'll send this out to everyone as well as those who maybe couldn't make it today, so they'll have a better sense of what we'll cover. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, and the state of virtual events has transformed since, last year, 3 months ago. We'll spend a little time today discussing where things stand now and what it looks like in the future. We'll also talk about success metrics and specifically how you would measure the success of a virtual event, whether it be a gala or something else, because these metrics are unique to the virtual space. We have a case study to present, and rather than showing you how someone else did it in a really good way, we'll really dive into some of the specifics and what made it so successful, so you can review, pick and choose some of those tactics and apply them to your program. And then before we open up to Q&A, we'll touch on some unique strategies for peer-to-peer fundraising. So giving you some specific examples on how we can break the mold of traditional peer-to-peer and create new events. we'd like to also make sure that you feel good leaving this session today. We hope that you'd like to revisit some of the pieces that we spoke to, or you have questions on how you can execute them. We'll cover a lot and it'll get really creative, but I hope you leave here feeling confident, knowledgeable, and motivated. These ideas that we'll speak to, they don't come in template format, but what we'll do is be sure to identify the key success metrics or makers for you to be able to apply those to your programs, or even create a new program or a new fundraising arm that maybe you didn't consider in the past. And being that the world is in more of a virtual notion right now, you're considering something fresh now.
Awesome. Thanks, Margaret. I will jump in, and the burning questions that everybody, I know it's my burning question in the fundraising space right now, but are virtual events working? Again, 5 months into this virtual event world, and as you're probably seeing, whether you fundraise for advancement services, hospitals, health organizations, social services, no matter what type of way you fundraise, you've been upended most likely. And so we've been now sitting in this virtual environment for 5 months or so, and people are starting to ask, are these working? And I love this visual on this slide because the answer is yes. And we could stop there and move on, but the real question behind virtual events is not, are they working? Yes or no, but rather, why are they working? And so the good news, bad news situation here is, yes, they are working. There's the good news. The bad news situation is because we kind of are, we're obviously sitting in a different time for giving, a different time for us as individuals, just a different time than we've ever experienced before. So we are seeing that the trends are lower than maybe previous events. Does not necessarily mean that it is because virtual events aren't the way to go. They absolutely are. But rather, what we're seeing is this transition into a new type of fundraising sitting right alongside a place where maybe not everybody could give as they used to. So the positive news, and what I love telling people when I get asked this question, yes, they are working. You are going to have to expect some differences from what you were doing prior to the pandemic and to where we sit right now. But the answer is yes, they're working. And one of the reasons why they're working is just because they are a little less expensive to produce. So I mentioned that did I mention that it's about 20% people were seeing raising around 20% less than maybe they did in the year prior. But what we're also seeing is that fundraising events are still hitting their net revenue budget, meaning they're still making the goal for the event, because what used to be something that was in person and had a lot of expenses attached to it still has expenses, but they're different. And even though technology isn't the cheapest world to enter into, it's still way more less expensive than hosting that in-person event. So there's the excitement. Yes, they're working. Yes, they're raising money. It might not be as much as you did last year, but you're going to save it on your expenses. So Zuri Group here, we are, and we are currently working with a few clients on transitioning from the in-person event space to the virtual event space. I'm going to tell you a lot more about the Mercy Home for Boys and Girls and why their event was so successful. And we're also seeing that it's not just necessarily a gala or a walk, there's virtual everything these days. So the world has kind of opened up to new limitless possibilities. And that's why we're having this webinar today. And if, for those of you who get concerned about, will my virtual event be attended? Are people actually going to be there? Are people having Zoom fatigue? We're all having these conversations. My particular answer to that question is that virtual events are being widely attended, well received, and for those who can give, they are giving. So you can put your minds at ease about, are they working? But always ask yourself not just yes or no, but ask why. Here's why virtual events are successful. Right now, we've got a lot of stuff going on around us, but your donors prior to the current state of events loved your organization and they really supported your mission. So by inserting a virtual event into our current world, uh, you are providing that normalcy and that hope and that comfort to the donor who was giving to you prior to COVID 19. And you're actually giving them a place where they can go back to something they really love to do, and it makes them feel really, really good about doing it. So, that is one of the critical success factors to why virtual events are working. They're also working because while we're hosting these virtual events, you're relaying why your mission is important right now, versus at any other time during the year. We were seeing a lot of people highlight their virtual events and explain that it's for a certain program to protect the community at large or that you work with, or we're going to do something that shows our support to our patients and families that might be struggling more during this time, or whatever your mission is. You're showing that your mission is important right now, even during a situation where there's so much going on that is equally as important. My favorite reason why virtual events work is because it showcases your ingenuity. It showcases your ability as an organization to pivot, and especially now in a time where we've got so much coming at us. Creativity is really the key to getting something to stick out. And your virtual event showcases that the tides may change and things are going to happen, but us as an organization, we're going to be flexible, we're going to move through it, and we're going to be great and okay. And then, of course, it creates that virtual community that so many of us are looking to be a part of in lieu of being able to be around our local communities. So we did a webinar a couple of months ago on the exact, like diving into this slide. And I'm going to go through some of these that I find really important, but I wanted to give you kind of a nice screenshot of what things are super important from a strategy and execution level to look at when you have a virtual event. You guys are probably, if you were doing in-person events prior to COVID, you're very used to that. I used to work for an organization where we did events all the time. We were like a well-oiled machine, and so we knew exactly what we needed to do, when we needed to send the e-com out, how much in advance. We had it all down to an exact science, and what I can only imagine is if I were still in that position, my great plan would have been upended and thrown on the floor. So I have prepared some thoughts on virtual event must-haves, and it covers the gamut from your marketing all the way down through your messaging. Your marketing plan is really important to your virtual event, just like it is to your in-person event, and even a little more so because for some of you, this might be the first time that your donors are walking into a virtual environment for you. And so having a timeline that shows when you should be communicating, how you should be communicating, what needs to be set up from your technological standpoint, where do you need to test before you go live? All of these things are really important and need to be thought out in advance. Everybody kind of has a different timeline on how long it takes to produce a successful virtual event. And we don't I would say it's run the gamut, right? Like we've popped up virtual events really quickly and we've really planned on some. The average time that I'm seeing currently right now in the market is around 3 months. So you should plan about 3 months in advance that you're going to have a virtual event and start looking and creating your plan. Technology is obviously very important, and we're going to be discussing that at nausea, or way more in depth in the next section. So I'll just leave this there for right now, because obviously in a virtual environment, you need the technology to support virtual giving, to support live streaming, to support all the great things that you do. Staff time is also very important. Staff members are critical to the success of virtual events for a variety of reasons, and probably execution is a big part of them. But remember that your staff is also the key, or the staff that work for your nonprofit are the key to unlocking action. They are your relationship managers. They're the people that steward the donors. They're the people that know the backstory of why people give. And so this is a time where it's an all hands on deck situation, getting on the phone, reaching out to those constituents, and really pumping your community up about this virtual event using staff, volunteers, board members, anyone who loves your organization. Get them on board. And then messaging is also extremely important. What we're seeing now, more and more so than ever, is that virtual events work when the messaging is direct, when the messaging is telling them exactly what they need to do, and the messaging is compassionate. And so if you end up entering into a virtual space and you find you're spending a lot of time on the messaging, you're probably doing something right. Because again, this is new for all of us. It's new for you, it's new for your donors, it's new for the constituent or the people that you serve. And so spending the time on making sure that your messaging is clear and concise and tells people exactly what they need to do in order to be successful is what's making virtual events successful. And let's talk about one. So, we, Zuri Group, had the pleasure of partnering with the Mercy Home for Boys and Girls on a gala. It was their graduation luncheon. To provide some background on Mercy Home for Boys and Girls, they are in Chicago. They're an in-home facility for troubled youth who need support and assistance to get them through high school and into the college environment. And it's a wonderful, wonderful program. They've hosted this graduation luncheon because every year students obviously graduate from their program and head off to their college. And they have this graduation luncheon as a celebration for the graduates, as a way to tell the community at large about what they're doing in the Chicago area, thanking sponsors and donors, hosting 800 people in a downtown location, feeding them lunch and drinks. Obviously, COVID stopped the availability of having this, and they were really saddened for a bunch of reasons. One was obviously that their fundraising needs were in jeopardy of being met, but more importantly, they were sad for the kids who look forward to this graduation for the entire year, who have been working really, really hard to get where they need to go and wanted to go, and they were there and they weren't able to celebrate. So it's what had to happen. But it was definitely a hard realization for Mercy Home for Boys and Girls to come to, because of, traditionally the event is so great. In person. Well, I can tell you, we worked with Mercy Home, and I'm not just saying this because we did it. We worked together on this, but I think what they ended up producing as a virtual event was not just a nice base hit; it was a home run, slam dunk for their audience. You can see here. So normally 800 people attended their in-person event. They were able to capture and keep for the full 45 minutes to an hour about 600 attendees, which is spectacular. They had engaging videos, they had speakers, and the live paddle auction, which I am still so like touting as one of the best paddle auctions I've ever seen. And then add into it that it was on a virtual space, it was a slam dunk. I want to make a really interesting note here about these videos and speakers, and this is where technology came into play, because Actually, in addition to just the coronavirus pandemic, the Mercy Home graduation fell right during the time of social unrest in the city of Chicago. So we had been planning for weeks that all of the speakers would arrive socially distanced at a TV studio downtown and that they would be live streaming from that studio. But one of the things that we decided to do, just as a secondary, just hedging all of our bets, was we taped everybody live just in case. And wouldn't you know it, the night before the gala was also the night of the social unrest in Chicago. And the very last minute, Mercy Home had to actually pull all their speakers from coming to the TV station, and we had to go with the pre-recorded versions of it. And you wouldn't have known the difference. As a person who was working on planning the event, I couldn't tell that, but it was one of those little details that Mercy Home added in to their planning and their preparation that really, really ended up being a good decision. Because had they not been able to come into the city, we would have been in another conundrum altogether. We were able to make them a custom page that actually had a donation form right on their page with their live stream, as well as a chat feature. And what this did for them was create one space where all of their attendees could come and watch the live stream, make the donation, and interact with their audience without leaving the page once. Mercy Home also did something really amazing, which was use peer-to-peer pages as quote unquote virtual tables, because that's going to be talked about a little bit down the line. I am going to not talk about it now. We'll cover it in a little bit, but this was where we saw that ingenuity coming from the peer-to-peer space, where they took a traditional peer-to-peer page and converted it into a virtual table page where supporters of the organization, companies that had staff or that wanted to be involved, corporate sponsors could invite not just the 8 people that would have been at the original event, but rather their whole universe. So it all of a sudden opened up a virtual graduation to the entire nation and the worldwide community if they wanted to. And most importantly, what Mercy Home did, because of all of this planning and all of this great work on the presentation around their gala, uh, they had set a goal to raise $60,000. And if they did, it was going to be a successful day. They then increased to 80,000, thinking, okay, maybe we can do this. They're feeling a little confident. And as you see from my screenshot, they ended up over $112,000 raised in 1 hour. That not only met their financial goal, it exceeded it. And once again, because this event moving to technology was a way less costly endeavor, they ended up raising enough money to support the Mercy Home and Boys and Girls with this effort through this fundraiser. And so I think this is just one of the best case studies that I've personally seen out there recently, especially in this gala space. And it wasn't easy. It was certainly a out of the box, untraditional way of moving forward. And there were definitely some internal struggles with that. But at the end of the day, their staff came together and were thrilled at the experience. Their donors obviously reacted to the experience with their donations, and they were really able to highlight the children of Mercy Home that were graduating through video and speaking, really relay their mission. So you can actually go and visit their website and watch their gala anytime you like. It's still up there. And I highly recommend that you do it. It was a spectacular experience to be there for that. And I'm a fundraiser for many, many years, but I was cheering them on like I was watching the Super Bowl.
I love that.
All right, so let's do this. Let's dive into the great unknown. When I think of the great unknown, Margaret, I actually think about the ocean. I don't know. I love the ocean. And so I was
Yeah.
looking at like, where's the great unknown and where are things that we don't know about? I think it lies under the ocean. Um, but I also think that this is a time to highlight one of my favorite fundraising quotes. It's not a fundraising quote, but I have found this actually a little known fact. For 20 years, I've had this quote in my office in some capacity, every office I've ever been in. And I've had a lot of offices. So that tells you how much I love this quote because and I firmly believe this as a fundraiser and as a fundraising strategist, sometimes you just have to take the leap and build your wings on the way down. And Margaret, aren't we in that situation right now? I think we are.
We are so much. Yes. And
So,
I can
so,
definitely feel it over here. I like that
so,
quote too. And I actually I went zip lining for the first time the other day,
oh,
and I was so scared, and I just said, clip in and let's go, and we'll figure it out on the way down.
look at you
So
did
I feel this
it. You
quote in this picture.
did your face look like that, guys? um, well, and I feel like that picture very, very funnily and elegantly explains the next part of what we're going to talk about, which is diving into uncharted territory, going into the ocean, taking the leap and building the wings on the way down. But because we are where we are in today's giving landscape, creativity and functionality and use of technology is key and critical to success. Myself as a peer-to-peer fundraiser, and Margaret, you as somebody who works in the technology constantly, we have sort of been kind of seeing, but also really applauding creativity in the space of how do we use peer to peer fundraising. Traditionally, everybody should be doing that, even in the pandemic, but also where can we input a little of the peer to peer look and feel in order to maybe prop up or lift up some of our programs that have always done well for us, but maybe could use a little boost. So these are the places where we have seen that peer to peer can live and thrive. We're going to jump into all of these: giving days and grateful patient programs, recurring gifts, tournaments, and more, and then galas. So, Margaret, let's first start with Giving Days and Grateful Patient programs.
Yeah.
Talk about kind of where injecting peer to peer could be kind of like a win win situation.
Yeah, I like that, injecting peer-to-peer. So what you just mentioned too on, using the peer-to-peer model in non-traditional ways, it's kind of like sprinkling it throughout your programs. And rather than saying, do we have a peer-to-peer program and checking the box, saying, how can we use peer-to-peer for all or some of our programs? So Giving Days is a really good example. A lot of universities do a Giving Day, but it can certainly be applied to any organization. The key for Giving Days is that it all revolves around a single day. We don't want to limit people to giving on that day, but it's certainly we want to ramp them up to get excited about that day and kind of drive the community to come together at a certain time. With the peer-to-peer model, you can do something like leveraging a fundraising page, like a personal or a team fundraising page to represent a fund, or in the university realm, maybe a school like the School of Law or Applied Sciences. And then people can give to that page, which would otherwise be an actual person or a registrant, but it's representing a school. And we can leverage things like the team leaderboard or the program leaderboard to really create a donor roll so people can get that recognition online. And then same goes for the total raise thermometer. So how much did this school raise versus the program as a whole, and just drive people on that day to make a gift. I think things like a countdown are really important for Giving Days. So expressing the urgency and the ticker that counts down 24 hours during the day, I think is really fun and important and drives that urgency there. I also like that we have up here the brand. So create a giving day and a brand for your peer-to-peer outlet for that day. We've talked, quite often about branded sustainer programs and just segmenting these groups out a little bit more and creating something custom. And I think it's really important for giving days as well.
Yeah, it is. It's great. Hey, Margaret, question for you about giving days, because there definitely are a couple of different types that I've personally seen. One way is like, so for example, I know I live in Austin, Texas, and we do a yearly giving campaign here in February, which is called I Live Here, I Give Here. And our local nonprofits are a part of that. So they participate in I Live Here, I Give Here, and there's a lot of lead up to it. But have you seen organizations? I think a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, there's another thing to do is just create your own giving day, maybe around a month of awareness or whatever it is. Create, if you don't have one in your
Mm-hmm.
local area, to create your own giving day and kind of injecting all of this into that. Is that kind of where you were thinking, like, let's talk about that for a second. Like, if you were going to create your own giving day.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you said too around like an awareness month.
Mm-hmm.
If your organization focuses on that type of structure, it would be really good to either kick off Awareness Month with a giving day or maybe end it with a
Mm.
giving day or put it in the middle, but really think of it as kind of like um, the peak of the fundraising is the giving or the day itself. So you would start
Yeah.
off slow, peak at the day up, and then still allow people to make gifts afterwards. We don't have to cut them off, but you can incorporate things that are just specific for the day, whether you reveal them on that day or there's some sort of e-com or a live or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
This can also be an in-person thing. So going back to your community example, people like to get together. So when we are allowed to restructure and go that direction, I think it would be good to think about this in more of an in-person event. But being able to start it off virtually can certainly get the ball rolling.
I like that. I like that a lot. And when you said either kick off your giving month or your awareness month or end your awareness month, yeah, I kind of like the idea of both, to be very honest. Why
Mm-hmm.
not? Why not try both? But, and correct me, my thought on this is like, let's say a giving day, and obviously, we have a lot of third party softwares that allow you to create giving campaigns and then brand those campaigns as such. We're going to talk about it again in a little while. And so I personally love that as well. But how long do you think a giving day should run? See, I think it's about 6 days, right? Well, so, and I say that as it's a giving day, but as far as messaging goes, I say you kind of let the cat out of the bag and then let it run for a couple of days. But focusing on this is the day we're going to give. Would you say
Yeah, I
you have a
agree with
different
that.
thought or?
No, I like that idea. I think if it's a new program, getting the message out there and why it's important is key, and maybe that comes quite a bit ahead of time, or it's in your newsletter, or just getting that awareness out there. But I do think the push towards the gift would be pretty quickly, or I guess pretty short. So I like your 6 day reference. I also
Mhm.
thought too, for what we're talking about a peer-to-peer model. And from the technology standpoint, what helps is really understanding this as more of your team and individual structure under an event. And so your funds or your schools are represented by teams, and all of the things that you would do to push gifts towards those teams, you would just translate that into pushing gifts towards those schools. So it's kind of like a language barrier or vocabulary break that you need to create. But once you can really digest that, I think the giving day kind of comes to life online.
I had a note to bring this back up. And so you did a great job, Margaret, of actually just saying what I was going to say was that, you're using the peer-to-peer team function as a catch-all for maybe, let's say, if you're a local church or a local school or like a local neighborhood, that like
Mm-hmm.
creating that giving day page around we are the Smithfield community and we are supporting the American Cancer Society and make your donations here. So you are showing the impact of that virtual community is so critical. And that's where the gamification and also really the fun of giving days come in, because now you know you
Hmm.
have groups of people that are working together. So, and messaging here is really important, because obviously you don't want to call it a team page because it'll be different, but it's not quite a team page, but it is, and that's how it's referred to in the systems. Why don't we,
Hmm.
I think Grateful Patient programs kind of run very similar to this. And so I don't know if there's anything we can sort of add on to this, but I do want to bring up the idea of Grateful Patient programs. And for those of you who might not work in a field or work in a nonprofit where Grateful Patient programs exist, it's really traditionally held, especially in hospital fundraising, where after somebody has been successfully and treated and has received an exceptional level of care or service from an organization, a Grateful Patient program is set up for that person, that family, to honor the effort on their behalf by doing fundraising. And I think it's a really beautiful way of fundraising, for fundraising in gratitude. Um, my thought for bringing up Grateful Patient program here is that not necessarily is to say, is there, obviously using peer to peer is really helpful for this, but rather let's go beyond. Maybe it's not a patient, maybe it is a grateful entrepreneur or a grateful, I don't know who else, any
I like that.
grateful
Kind of like an
anyone.
arm to your DIY program. Hmm.
Exactly. Like saying, this person, and we work with some organizations where we struggle with it because the clientele that you're serving, or the mission that the people that you're serving, are probably not your fundraising candidates. And if that's the case, that's okay. Um, but and there's a lot of missions out there where that's probably not the best case. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have it, or you shouldn't do it, or it can't be a campaign that you have and it lives in perpetuity on your site when people ask for it. But any other thoughts around Grateful Patient programs and peer to peer? I think it's a great
Yeah,
idea. It's a great
so
way to do it.
I do. I like it too. It's that recognition, or the being grateful. So it is more of your DIY, I think, peer-to-peer model or program. But the difference between your traditional DIY program is when people enter a DIY site, they have some sort of timeline. I'm fundraising for my birthday, or I'm
Mm.
fundraising for my anniversary, or I'm creating my own event. Whereas this is more of I just want to get my message out there, and it can kind of live forever.
Mhm.
So you can put a page up and then, ask for donations for a specific year, or just have it ongoing. It's a little bit, I think, softer of an ask under the DIY umbrella.
That's such a great way of saying that. It is a softer ask, and it's something that, you're forever going to be grateful for this organization or for this institution or for this, wherever it is, you're forever going to be grateful for them. And so that can sort of live on, years and years after. I love it.
Mhm.
Well, Margaret, let's switch over to, I think, my favorite peer-to-peer, untraditional peer-to-peer topic that we're going to cover, which is recurring giving. I hope everybody on the call has a sustaining gift program, a recurring giving program. But did you know, Margaret? Well, Margaret knows, but this is a great place for peer-to-peer. Let's talk about this functionality, Margaret. Go dive in.
Yeah, so this has been a fun one. And I loved getting into learning more about what you're currently doing with sustainers and how we're engaging with them outside of just their initial gift. Um, but we have these ideas to create a peer-to-peer space for them. So allow your recurring donor or your sustainer to create a page similar to Grateful Patient. You came here for a reason. This gift means a lot to you. You mean a lot to us. So give them a place to send their message. And then from their page that they're creating, and the gift that they just made, they can recruit other people to join this program through our traditional peer-to-peer outlets, like emailing from your participant center or your personal page, and sending out social share messages with their page on it that shows their recurring gift. We can also leverage things like leaderboard, who's made the largest recurring gift or who are recent recurring donors. And then also giving people a space for just that donor recognition. So whether or not it's a leaderboard, these are all of the people who have given to my page that I created through the Sustainer program. I think it's really cool.
I love that. And the team page kind of becomes the virtual universe for these recurring givers to even do stuff like chat with each other, right, Margaret? They can, some functionalities, you can talk to each other.
Yeah, the initial donor, so the one who says, this organization means a lot to me and I'm going to create this message page and send it out into the universe, they will have functionality similar to like a team captain. So if people do make another gift through their page, which could be a team page, they can send a message directly to those people to thank them or let them know that they wanted to actually get together once we're allowed to do that again, and really start their own niche of fundraising for your organization.
Yeah, and this is another really cool place where using the team page functionality to kind of uh, calculate your total giving network is a really, I might not be saying that right, but it is a really, really fun tool because, as recurring givers give on your page and your money and your thermometer goes up, you're starting to see not only, or your givers will start to see not only their impact, which is greatly added because they're giving monthly, but the fact that they were able to recruit 10 people, 5 people, one person, or whatever, to also make that recurring gift. And the thermometer that lives on that team page increases to show the amount of money that that community is annually giving. To me, that lives so perfectly in the group fundraising potential. For churches, communities, schools, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever. I don't know. Like it's really fun. The concept that you could, again, gamify or with very easy tracking on fundraising pages because the functionality is already built in there, that you could watch friendly competitions or gamification of people giving and really supporting and helping is fantastic.
Yeah, I watched this Curb Your Enthusiasm episode one time, and it was all about an anonymous donor and how someone made a large gift and they were anonymous, and then they went to a gala where they were giving recognition to all the donors and they didn't get any recognition. And it's just that the message was that he didn't want it to be anonymous. He wanted people to know. And I think this gives that kind of public space for your support and your gift to the organization.
Margaret, you're going to have to get that episode and send it to us afterwards because I want to watch that.
I will. It's so funny. I'll find the clip.
We all know a donor who doesn't really want to be anonymous, I'm sure, in our Oh, that's a great one. That is a great, great one. I love that. I love recurring gift programs. In general, I love the idea of asking your friends and family to do it and join in on that. And I love the potential that is there of really seeing a pyramid effect on giving. And to me, there's no other place to do it as successfully as if in a peer-to-peer model. But that's just me. I'm biased. Let's talk a little bit about tournaments and virtual events and more, because a lot of people have functionality in their current systems that allow for an evergreen campaign or the creation of like a branded type of a campaign. So Margaret, you want to kind of talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, definitely. I think tournaments is a good example. So the way I think about tournaments is kind of a tiered structure where you have the tournament itself, and you might have teams within the tournament and then individuals within that team. And it can be a volleyball tournament or something like that. And with that tiered structure, sometimes organizations will kind of push that event type aside because a lot of peer-to-peer platforms don't really support it in that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who want to start a tournament or organize a community event for your organization, I would consider them high value supporters. And so maybe that says that we need to reach out to them individually, work with them on creating a digital space to support their event. And it does require a little more work in-house, but ultimately it should show a very positive ROI. So for tournaments, what I would recommend doing is creating almost like templated sites for them to be able to add their event information, the date and the time and the location, and then send it out to their community, get those teams registered, and then get those individuals registered to those teams. So just having something that's pretty standard in your back pocket digitally, I think will help streamline and open up the conversation to allowing people to create tournaments on behalf of your organization.
So, from a strategy side, why I love talking about this is mainly because, Margaret, when we talked about this, you were saying kind of like using tournaments as an example, golf tournaments. It's so funny. Everybody has asked me, because golf tournaments is still traditionally a really great way of raising money. It's like, has anybody hosted a successful golf virtual fundraiser yet? And the answer I currently have is not that I've seen. But like when we were talking about this, you were saying, in a way to create these tournament places, branding it towards what your tournament was in, I was going to say in real life, but this is real life, what your tournament was in real life. And really giving those people, so not only when they come to the space to do their type of fundraising, it's visually confirming to them. That's why I like this so much. The other thing
Yeah.
is that from a strategy perspective, because all of your functionality and most of your functionality, I would imagine you guys are working in, allows you to create autoresponders and to create structured e-communication that your attendees can use. And traditional peer-to-peer is very different from how you would talk to tournament attendees. And where I like this in functionality is that you can actually completely reconfigure those autoresponders and that e-com to be very specific to your type of tournament, which is really quite interesting.
Right, and it's part of those built-in features are automated. So when someone registers, they'll get a series, and that series will be delivered at different times than someone who registers next week. I also think for tournaments, if you don't already have a tournament program or a tournament arm for fundraising, if you wanted to start one, you could reach out to successful team captains from maybe your run walk or some other program that may be virtual this year, and see if they're interested in organizing an event like this on your behalf.
I love that idea, giving people another way to participate if their traditional participation mechanism has maybe gone by the wayside for a while. I wrote my note to say a case study. I don't really have an example of it, unfortunately, but when we started talking about this offline, I absolutely, why this specific example popped in for me was because when I worked at Heifer International, we had a lot of businesses that wanted to start do fundraising for us. And they wanted to collect money on their website, or they wanted to put a card in their product boxes or whatever it was, but they wanted an online mechanism for donations. And obviously, because they're doing this for us, they want a tracking mechanism too. So we were using the system that we used at the time, allowed us to create campaigns, branded campaigns. And it wasn't a tournament, but we created a business for good page. Basically what that was every time a company reached out to us and said, hey, I want to do a fundraiser for you at my office, or I want to do a fundraiser for you at my store, we would be like, great, here's the first step. Go to this page. It was fully branded for corporate. All the autoresponders, all the e-com spoke to, thank you for signing your business up for fundraising for us. Thank you for giving in your workplace, whatever it was. And it was something that lived. It took about an hour or two to set up. But we then had a place for any business who ever wanted to. So it was a great example of working smarter, not harder, around the peer-to-peer space. And your tournament idea kind of also falls right in line with that. And for 2 hours
Yeah.
worth of work, if you get people to raise money on it and it works, it was worth the effort. I think. Not I think. I
Yeah,
know.
I agree. That's awesome.
Let's finish out this brainstorm, Margaret, talking about galas. And peer to peer, because you obviously we started off with Mercy Home. We'll end with telling the success of Mercy Home. But why, in your opinion, or how does the technology with peer to peer line up perfectly kind of for a gala? Question mark.
That's a great
Like,
question. Well, and what I think when we talk about going virtual, we tend to think about a single piece of technology to really drive everything. And I think when you're leading events like galas, you should try to think of how you can use multiple or different tools in order to create this really unique event. So looking at if you wanted to run your tables through a peer-to-peer page, but you want to broadcast everything on Zoom or Facebook Live. So being able to kind of combine those two technologies to create the full structure. Um,
mhm.
and think about what people are already using. So you say Facebook Live as an example. If you're currently using Facebook fundraising, which you should be, and you notice that you're very successful, you have a lot of people who are gravitating towards that fundraising arm, then consider going live on Facebook over something like YouTube and really diving into the differences between the systems to determine which one you'll use. And with that setup of multiple tools, test drive, run through,
Mm.
dress rehearsal is very important. So the Mercy Home example, I can imagine that they walked through what that luncheon looked like multiple times and adjusted accordingly because the execution was so seamless. And yes, that sounds like a
Mhm.
lot of work, but ultimately at the end, as you can see with Mercy Home, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, thank you. It is. It's really and why we've touched on this a couple of times, but why the peer-to-peer table? So actually I will say for Mercy Home, their system allowed them to create tables for their constituents. And so they chose to create the tables for their peer-to-peer constituents rather than asking. And I really liked this, but it worked for their specific event. But what the peer-to-peer pages actually became, like I said, was these virtual tables where one person basically had a link to their peer-to-peer page, which was the invitation to the gala. And the thermometer on that team page was calculating the giving just of the people on that peer to peer page. So it was really easy to see that my virtual table, and you can't see my air quotes, but my virtual table gave $700 towards the overall. We also were able to put, and it was custom work, but it worked really well where you put in a chat feature. So, and I mentioned at the beginning when you were on the main homepage, you were watching the gala, but when you were on the peer to peer page, you were also watching the gala, but it was just you guys. So the page actually created this virtual table environment where people could talk to each other. I will say, in full transparency, the chat feature wasn't really wildly used, and we thought it was going to be. And so that would be my one sort of note there. But it was there, and the people that wanted to did use it. It also made it really easy after the fact to go back to each individual table captain or whatever they were calling them and say, wow, your table donated $20,000 towards our goal. That's spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you were able to use the in house technology to watch the success from multiple levels. And I thought that was so amazing. And I thought that was so cool to be able to, it made reporting back very easy. It made kind of every follow up very, very simple because you knew where the donations were coming from. It was a really, really unique and neat way to see peer to peer be successful. Any
Yeah,
other
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So before we dive into questions, I wanted to say, did we miss something? Is there a specific way of fundraising that you want us to live brainstorm for you? Let us know. Pop it in the chat or pop it in the questions. I don't know if Margaret might be getting a little nervous, but if not, I might be getting a little nervous. You never know. Pop it in. But this does lead us to our question and answer time. And let me take a look. You guys have been great. Okay, so one of the questions was how many staff did Mercy Home have and how were they involved in the event? That's a great question. Mercy Home does have a fairly robust staff. I worked directly with their execution team on strategizing e-communication, agenda, all of the functionality and all of those great things. I worked with one person on that. She was responsible for the event. But in full transparency, they have a department that writes their e-communication for them, and they had a department that was working on the IT end of it. So how many staff were involved in the event full time? It was probably 4 or 5. Each had their own specific part of the process, though, and we were all involved with that. That's a great question.
That is a good question. I think too, with like planning virtual events, involving people from different departments or areas within your organization is key. I focus on technology, and I know when Carly comes into the picture, my brainstorm sessions are that much more productive because she has that strategic vision. And so I think just involving people from different areas is really important.
Yeah, it's very good. So there's 2 other questions about, well, so here's one, Margaret. Is there specific software programs that work alongside Engaging Networks, which is a specific platform that run a tournament event? And I'm assuming the question is sort of like an app or a gaming system that you could like tournament in. So I know for Bowl for Kids' Sake, which is Big Brothers Big Sisters, we had suggested inputting a virtual app into a bowl. So create virtual bowling using an app. I don't know of any specific software that will run a tournament for you, like a golf tournament or anything like that. But Margaret, have you heard of any?
I haven't lately. There are a lot of like auction softwares that are specific to auctions, but I haven't really heard of anything tournament specific. With tournaments, I think the key is the different levels. So having your tournament as one thing, teams within that tournament, individuals within that tournament or that team. And Engaging Networks actually does offer one of, I would say, the most robust structural ways to set up your peer-to-peer site. So they do allow that hierarchy. For one organization we worked with, it wasn't a tournament, but it's a fundraiser they do every year. It's Derby Days, and they create schools within the peer-to-peer site. And within each of those schools, like the University of Wisconsin or the University of Oregon, fraternities will create teams to represent their fraternity. And within that fraternity, they'll have individuals who fundraise underneath that. So you have that additional layer of the school all rolled up into a single peer-to-peer site.
I love it. Great. Hey, we have one last question. I also noticed it's 1 o'clock. Hang on one second. This is a good question for all of us, and then we're going to say goodbye. But Margaret, here's the question. We have a really small budget. What are some low-cost ways to run a virtual event?
That's a great question. And I think this year has thrown a huge curveball across many different areas, but I think budgeting and resource allocation is a big topic of conversation. What I would do is recommend looking at your current staff capacity and your current suite of tools first. And even your current suite of tools can include free tools, like using Google Surveys or YouTube Live and Facebook Live. So really branch out and look at the resources that you have available at hand. And I do think some of the examples we spoke to today feel like these extravagant programs. And a lot of that is due to the success of those programs. But being able to just look at what we provided you with and pick and choose some things that we can just weave into our other programs to take us one step further to a successful virtual event is really important.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Margaret, and actually thank you to everybody here. I want to end by saying that we know that this topic is really meaty, and it's also definitely something that I'm sure, even after sitting through, lots of things come to your mind. So I do like to offer a free 30-minute session to anyone who attends a webinar. If you want to kind of reach out to me and schedule some time to talk through your virtual event plan, I'm more than happy to. You can email me at carly@zurigroup.com, or you can reach out to us just by going to zurigroup.com and giving us some more information. And somebody will reach out to you, because we know that there is just so much information. There's so much stuff coming at you right now. And even if your question kind of goes back to that one, that we have a really small budget and how do we work our virtual events, sometimes it's nice to just have that initial conversation. So it's there for you. It's available if you'd like it. Once again, thank you for joining us today. Margaret, thank you for being a spectacular technologist. Is a technologist even a thing?
Oh, thanks, Darcy.
We really enjoyed our time today with you guys, and thank you so very much. Please reach out to us. We're excited to, we'd love to brainstorm with you a little bit more, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.